In the quiet suburbs of Chicago during the 1970s, a man lived a life that appeared completely normal. He was friendly. He was active in politics. He ran a successful construction business. And in his spare time, he even dressed as a clown to entertain children at hospitals and community events. To his neighbors, he seemed like the kind of man you could trust. But behind that friendly smile was a horrifying secret. A secret that would eventually shock the entire world. His name was John Wayne Gacy, and he would become one of the most infamous serial killers in American history. Before investigators finally caught him, more than 30 young men and boys would lose their lives, and many of them would be found buried beneath the very house he lived in. This is the chilling story of the man who became known as the Killer Clown. To understand how these crimes began, we first have to go back to Gacy's early life. John Wayne Gacy was born on March 17, 1942, in Chicago, Illinois. Growing up, his childhood was far from happy. His father was known to be extremely abusive and often beat him while drunk. Gacy desperately wanted his father's approval, but rarely received it. This toxic home environment deeply affected him. As he got older, Gacy struggled with his identity and personal relationships. Despite these difficulties, he tried to build a normal life. In his 20s, he married his first wife and moved to Iowa, where he managed several restaurants. To outsiders, things seemed to be going well. But beneath the surface, darker tendencies were already beginning to emerge. In 1968, Gacy was arrested and convicted for sexually assaulting a teenage boy. He was sentenced to prison, but served only about 18 months before being released on parole. After his release, Gacy returned to Chicago and began rebuilding his life. He started a construction company called PDM Contractors. The business grew quickly, and Gacy earned a reputation as a hardworking and successful businessman. He even became involved in local politics and community activities. At parties and charity events, he sometimes dressed as a clown character named Pogo the Clown. Children loved him. Parents trusted him. But no one knew that behind closed doors, a monster was hiding. By the early 1970s, young men in the Chicago area began disappearing. Many of them were teenagers or young adults looking for work. Some had been last seen talking to a friendly contractor who offered them jobs. That contractor was John Wayne Gacy. Gacy often lured victims to his home with promises of work or money. Once inside, he used manipulation and deception to gain control over them. One of his most disturbing tricks involved what he called a magic handcuff trick. He would convince victims to put on the handcuffs, pretending he could escape from them easily. But once they were locked in place, the victims quickly realized they had been trapped. From there, the situation would become terrifying. Gacy would torture and assault his victims before eventually killing them. Most were strangled. Afterward, he hid their bodies beneath the crawlspace under his house. For years, no one suspected what was happening inside that suburban home. Neighbors remembered strange smells coming from the house at times, but Gacy always had an explanation. He claimed it was sewage problems or dead rodents. People believed him. After all, he was respected in the community. As time went on, the number of missing young men continued to grow. But it wasn't until December 1978 that the investigation finally began to close in on Gacy. A 15-year-old boy named Robert Peast had disappeared after telling his mother he was going to speak with a contractor about a job. Witnesses reported that the contractor was John Wayne Gacy. Police soon began investigating him. At first, Gacy appeared calm and cooperative, but detectives quickly noticed inconsistencies in his story. As they dug deeper into his past, they discovered his earlier conviction for sexual assault. This raised serious concerns. Investigators began surveillance on Gacy. They followed him day and night, hoping to find evidence connecting him to the disappearances. Meanwhile, officers obtained a search warrant for his home. What they discovered inside would become one of the most horrifying crime scenes in American history. When police entered the house, they immediately noticed a strong, foul odor. As they searched the property, they discovered suspicious areas in the crawl space beneath the house. Soon, the unthinkable happened. Human remains were found. Then, another body, and another. Investigators realized they were uncovering something far worse than anyone had imagined. Over the following days, police uncovered body after body buried beneath the house. In total, 29 victims were discovered in the crawl space. 3 more victims were later found in a nearby river. The sheer scale of the crimes shocked even experienced investigators. Many of the victims were teenagers or young men who had simply been looking for work. Their families had spent years wondering what had happened to them. Now they were finally getting answers. But those answers came with unimaginable horror. As evidence mounted, Gacy was arrested and interrogated by police. At first, he denied everything, but eventually, under intense questioning, he began to confess. During one of the interrogations, Gacy reportedly told investigators, "You know, clowns can get away with murder." His confession revealed the full extent of his crimes. He described how he lured victims to his house, how he controlled them, and how he buried their bodies beneath the floor. The details were so disturbing that many investigators struggled to listen. Even seasoned detectives were shaken by what they heard. The trial of John Wayne Gacy began in 1980. It quickly became one of the most high-profile criminal trials in the United States. Prosecutors presented overwhelming evidence. Forensic experts described the bodies found under the house. Witnesses testified about missing victims who had last been seen with Gacy. The defense attempted to argue that Gacy was insane, but the jury was not convinced. After only a few hours of deliberation, they reached a verdict. John Wayne Gacy was found guilty of multiple counts of murder. He was sentenced to death. For the families of the victims, the verdict brought some sense of justice, but the pain of their loss would never fully disappear. Gacy spent the next 14 years on death row. During that time, he continued to give interviews and even created paintings that were later sold. Some of the paintings depicted clowns. Many people were disturbed that his artwork was being collected and sold. Finally, on May 10, 1994, John Wayne Gacy was executed by lethal injection. Before his execution, his final words were reportedly, "Kiss my ass." Even in his final moments, he showed little remorse. The crimes of John Wayne Gacy remain one of the darkest chapters in American criminal history. His case changed how law enforcement investigated missing persons cases. It also raised serious questions about how such crimes could go unnoticed for so long. To this day, some victims have never been fully identified, and the memory of what happened in that quiet Chicago neighborhood still haunts many people. Because behind the image of a friendly clown was a man capable of unimaginable evil. If you enjoyed this true crime story, don't forget to subscribe for more real cases that shocked the world. Because sometimes, the most terrifying monsters are the ones hiding in plain sight.